Now, this is one of my recommended thought processes when trying to find a new item for the market. When I first got started, my father used to torment me with a single line. And he would say, son, you have to put your heart into the business. And I never knew what he meant for years. I'm talking about like 8 years in a row. Like he did this to me. And I have no clue what he's talking about. We would get into shouting matches eventually because every now and then he would just say, son, you have to put your heart into the business. And I show up every single day. And I'm like, I'm already here. I don't know what you're talking about. And he would say something like, well, it's one thing to be here, and it's another thing to put your heart into the business. I'm like, what do you mean specifically, put your heart into the business? And it took me so long to finally understand that it means that you have to eat, sleep, drink, think, everything. Every moment you're consumed by your craft. Because then and only then does the creativity come to you. You have to care about it that much. You have to have an innate sense of urgency towards what you're doing. You know, many times, if you were to ask me, like, what do I think is one of the toughest things about doing business, right? Shockingly enough, sometimes in the creativity part of it, coming up with names for stuff was always really difficult, right? Coming up with a name for your company, a name for an item, a name for a product line. I mean, unless you're comfortable with naming it anything and just going with something cringe, just like how lawyers just, you know, whatever their firm is called, they just go by their last names, and it is what it is. Just an industry standard thing. You don't have to get, you know, too cheeky with it. But when you're trying to come up with, you know, that name that people just get it, that really identifies with what your company stands for, and you're going to spend days, weeks, months, even sometimes. And when it hits you, it hits like lightning. You're just like, ah, yes, that is correct. That's the one. That's the name. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. You know, it's like, you know, when you have those brainstorming sessions and everybody's just sitting there twiddling their thumbs because the question is so simple. Hey, what should we call this? Yet nothing really flowing comes to mind until somebody finally says the right name. And then everybody's like, yes, that sounds good. That sounds good. Let's do that. Let's definitely go with that. So today's case study, I want to talk about viewing things through the lens of the buyer sometimes, right? And recently, I've been looking into microphones because just wanted to upgrade some of my equipment between, you know, lights, cameras, microphones, things like that. And for me, you know, starting my channel many years ago, like close to about 10 years ago, I never really thought that much into the microphone. Just reasonable sound was good enough. I picked up this microphone. This is a Blue Snowball. I just kind of like the way it looked. It was chrome. It had this retro look to it. So I just grabbed it, and that was it. There's barely any instructions. It's just a plug and play microphone. There's no software to it. There's no drivers to it. You just slapped it in and then just go. So when I wanted to upgrade my setup, I decided to, you know, shop around and give Amazon a gander. When you just go ahead and type in microphone, once again, we're standing in front of the wall, right? There's just a sea of sellers. There's all sorts of things out there. I'm sure some of you guys who understand microphones, you guys know who all the really big players are. There's Rode, there's Shure, there's Audio Technica. So how does somebody get into this? Again, we come back to knowing your market, knowing the category, and then shopping and really deep diving the topic here. I'm personally not into dealing in microphones, But because I did a deep dive, I kind of saw something that might have potential. Senpai Gaming, right? You see, he's a big channel, close to 700,000 subscribers. And he has a video where he's telling people to just stop buying microphones from gaming companies, right? And I'll play a little bit of the beginning of this video for you guys.
This is the worst mic I've ever tried. And it's $180, and we need to talk about that. We also need to talk about the 5 gaming companies that are making just terrible microphones. I'm gonna have to try really hard not to get upset during this video. It'll probably happen a little bit.
So essentially he goes on to explain that he was sent these microphones for review by these large companies and told them about the problems and the technical issues about them. And he was really, really shocked by their response, which is, yeah, okay. Kind of like a, we know. And what was appalling about it is that he goes on to explain that, so you know they're bad microphones and you're just peddling them off to people anyways. And when confronted about the issues with them, you don't really care. You're just going to sell them to people anyways based on the trust or rapport, the brand name that you built. Right. So after watching this video and doing a lot of shopping myself, I started to see that maybe there is room for a potential business idea within the realm of microphones. So I went ahead and purchased a couple of microphones based on recommendations that I saw on YouTube videos, like how many other people do. And what I ended up finding out was that they didn't really sound much better than my microphone out of the box. It was comparable. Some was a little bit better, some was a little bit worse. I personally use OBS just like a lot of other creators to make my videos. And I typed in OBS tune mic and let's just see what we get. And it turns out that there's a lot of video tutorials on how to tune your microphone. Any one of these are pretty good, actually. And if you haven't tuned your microphone and you need to, I actually recommend any one of these videos is pretty good. So what ended up happening was that my microphone starts to sound pretty good now, kind of like what you're hearing at this moment. But just out of curiosity, I decided to swap them back to my blue microphone. And it turns out no matter how I did the blind test challenge of all the microphones that I purchased, I ended up returning all of them and just keeping the same microphone that I started with because it actually sounded the best. Yet this thing is listed as a really cheap $40, $50 microphone compared to a couple of ones that I bought that was, north of $100. Now, it's not to say that, very expensive microphones are not better than this one. Yes, absolutely. But I wasn't really looking to dive into thousands of dollars of like audio equipment. I just wanted to get something that I thought would be a little bit better, and it really didn't get me there. Essentially, what I'm seeing is that once again, money is being left on the table because I was a serious shopper. I was really looking to spend money to pick up something. And what ended up happening is I returned everything. So money is left on the table. This got me thinking that perhaps for a lot of people, they feel exactly like me. Didn't really ever consider the option of tweaking the microphone, or that you could tweak a microphone versus just plugging it in and just making your videos. This item actually didn't come with any software. So perhaps if I were to scour the market and meet with any type of microphone manufacturer, I could go check out a couple of things that I like and maybe not worry too much about the hardware itself, but put a little more emphasis on either combining it with some software to help the user have an easier adjusting experience, or maybe just presets with a couple of really good sounding equalizer settings. If you know anything about microphones, generally, other than the idea of dynamic microphones and compressor microphones, there is microphones with a couple of settings on it, but the settings are usually all directional settings, cardioid settings, bidirectional settings, omnidirectional settings. But essentially, when purchasing a microphone, I didn't know about things like expanders, compressors, limiters. Of course, we've all seen what a studio looks like and a producer behind a mixing board, and then he's got all these switches in front of him, and then he's adjusting the equalizer and stuff. But I had no idea exactly how to do stuff like that. I don't know what you're supposed to really set until I had to go deep dive all these tutorials myself. So essentially, perhaps you could put together a microphone package that isn't too expensive, but contains all the information, education, or possibly either bundled software or some type of third-party software, perhaps even a QR code with a tutorial inside, right? And possibly you could maybe even pay one of these guys to do it. And possibly you might have something that other large companies are overlooking. And again, giving these reviewers a reason, a real solid reason to give your item a glowing recommendation. Now, this is one of my recommended thought processes when trying to find a new item for the market. The way to deep dive the market so that you could see things from the customer's perspective by pretending to be a customer, or actually genuinely you need one. So notice what's out there, notice what's missing, notice what you could provide, because it's highly likely that when you solve your problem, you're solving problems for many people out there. And now you're able to come up with a legit item to fill the needs of many customers out there where large companies are too ignorant to bother looking into.